Since early this morning in Gaza, Israeli invasion forces have been raiding and ransacking al-Shifa hospital, Gaza's largest medical center. The occupation army is in the dialysis building without bothering to bring fuel to help patients, the hospital's director, Mohammed Abu Salmiya, told Al Jazeera Arabic. We cannot reach the pharmacy to treat patients as the occupation shoots everyone who moves, he said. Abu Salmiya described being unable to communicate with doctors throughout the hospital, and he said he was unaware of the state of the dozens of premature babies being treated at the facility. He said no one from the Israeli army has contacted him since the hospital was stormed, and water, electricity, and oxygen are completely cut off. The patient's wounds began to rot significantly after all services in the hospital stopped, he said. The smell of death wafts everywhere. Even before the Israeli invasion of al-Shifa hospital, the situation there was dire. Earlier in the day, before troops invaded, staff had buried dozens of bodies in a makeshift mass grave in the hospital's yard. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐞𝐜, the emergency coordinator for al-Shifa hospital, told Al Jazeera Arabic by phone that the situation was getting more desperate every hour and more people were dying. He said the Israeli forces storming the hospital had detained many of the displaced people sheltering there, blindfolded them, and stripped them of their clothes, and then took them to unknown destinations. The Israelis blew up most of the hospital gates, and shrapnel hit many people, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 said. And he added that no one had seen the Israelis delivering any supplies as they had claimed they would do in their social media propaganda. An important point that 𝐓𝐡𝐞 made, and that others present on the scene have emphasized in recent hours, there have been absolutely no exchanges of fire, and that's because there are no Palestinian resistance fighters at the hospital. The only violence has come from the constant shelling and shooting by the invading Israeli forces. Thousands of people, the sick, injured, medical staff, and displaced people are being attacked, terrorized, and in many cases killed. And for what? It's clear that Israel's systematic attack on the healthcare system in Gaza, which has now forced most of the hospitals and dozens of health facilities to shut down, is part of its genocidal campaign to destroy the Palestinian people in Gaza and to make the territory uninhabitable. That's a goal Israeli leaders have publicly and clearly declared. But Israel does have a long-standing obsession with al-Shifa hospital in particular that goes back many years. Look at this article in the New York Times from 2009, for instance. It says, quote, the Israeli intelligence chief Yuval Diskin, in a report to the Israeli cabinet, said that the Gaza-based leadership of Hamas was in underground housing beneath the number 2 building of Shifa Hospital, the largest in Gaza. That allegation cannot be confirmed. End quote. The Times also stated, and I quote, weapons are hidden in mosques, schoolyards, and civilian houses, and the leadership's war room is a bunker beneath Gaza's largest hospital, Israeli intelligence officials say. End quote. The Israelis have never presented a shred of evidence that Hamas has a bunker under Shifa Hospital. So why do they keep insisting on this? Take a look at this article from the Israeli newspaper Haaretz, also from 2009, 14 years ago. It states, quote, senior Hamas officials in Gaza are hiding out in a bunker built by Israel, intelligence officials suspect. Many are believed to be in the basements of the Shifa hospital complex in Gaza City, which was refurbished during Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip. End quote. So did you hear that? A bunker built by Israel, according to Haaretz. And look at this article from the pro-Israel publication Tablet from July 29, 2014, during Israel's massive bombardment of Gaza that summer. It states the following, and I quote, "The Israelis are so sure about the location of the Hamas bunker, however, not because they are trying to score propaganda points or because it has been repeatedly mentioned in passing by Western reporters, but because they built it. Back in 1983, when Israel still ruled Gaza, they built a secure underground operating room and tunnel network between Shifa Hospital, which is among several reasons why Israeli security sources are so sure that there is a main Hamas command bunker in or around the large cement basement beneath the area of Building 2 of the hospital, which reporters are obviously prohibited from entering." End quote. Again, that was in 2014. In July 2014, Israel attacked al-Shifa Hospital, prompting condemnation from the medical charity Doctors Without Borders, among others. And 7 years later, on 16 May 2021, during another of its attacks on Gaza, Israel heavily bombed the area right around al-Shifa Hospital, killing dozens of people in their homes, an atrocity known as the Al-Wihda Street Massacre. I'm quoting now from an article in The Independent published on May 24, 2021. "The air raids turned one of the busiest streets in Gaza and the main access point to the strip's chief hospital, al-Shifa, into a crater-marked moonscape. In place of apartment buildings are mangled heaps of concrete fringed with curls of iron rebar and scraps of belongings." End quote. The Independent continues. When questioned about the purpose of the attack, the Israeli army said Hamas, the militant group that runs Gaza, bears responsibility for intentionally locating its military infrastructure under civilian houses, thus exposing civilians to danger. It said a preliminary investigation into the attack found that Israeli aircraft struck underground military infrastructure that was located under the road. The underground military facilities collapsed, causing the foundations of the civilian houses above them to collapse as well, leading to unintended casualties, a statement read. End quote. And of course, that was the Independent quoting and summarizing what the Israeli military said at the time of its bombing right outside al-Shifa Hospital in May of 2021. So let me summarize here. Israel wants you to believe the following propositions. First, that Hamas is stupid enough to use a bunker that Israel itself built and therefore presumably knows everything about. Second, that Hamas is stupid and careless enough to keep using this bunker, even though newspapers in Israel and the United States have for years published its precise alleged location. Third, Hamas is still using so-called underground military infrastructure under al-Shifa that Israel claims to have destroyed more than 2 years ago. Yes, you are supposed to believe that the same Hamas that managed to take Israel completely by surprise on October 7th in a sophisticated military occupation that destroyed Israel's southern command is dumb enough to hide its most valuable assets in exactly the place Israel says it is. I know it all sounds ridiculous, and it is, but the Israelis are used to having an easy time. The Biden White House apparently believes them, or is at least cynical enough to play along with their lies, and American and other Western media follow suit. Recall that a few days ago, Israel committed another war crime when it raided the Rantisi Children's Hospital in Gaza City, armed with its usual lies about Hamas bunkers under the medical facility. Even though it found absolutely nothing to corroborate those claims, that did not stop Israel's military spokesman, Daniel Hagari, putting out a ridiculous video, and I'm not exaggerating here, claiming that a wall calendar, a baby bottle, a hospital gown, and a bag of diapers were proof of Hamas activity. Let's watch a little clip of it together.
You're now entering into the room where we suspect the hostages were being held. I want you to look at this room. People are putting curtains with nothing above, just wall. No reason to put here a curtain unless you want to film hostages and deliver movies. And now we'll show you more evidence. In this room, there is a list. This list, in Arabic, this list says, we are in an operation. The operation against Israel started in the 7th of October. This is a Guardian list where every terrorist writes his name and every terrorist has his own shift guarding the people that were here.
Of course, that alleged list of Hamas terrorists didn't contain any names at all. It was simply a wall calendar. And I like how Hamas supposedly took the time to carefully hang those pleated curtains that were so neat and so properly organized that my own mother would be proud of them. Of course, we cannot rule out, indeed, we can only expect that Israel is going to put out similar propaganda from al-Shifa, and US media will regurgitate it without any challenge. Indeed, Israel is already claiming, according to media reports I've looked at today, that it has, quote, uncovered weapons in the basement of the hospital. That's already a major climb down from their fantasies about a Bond villain type lair for senior Hamas leaders hiding under the hospital. But as I said, Israel does not have to try very hard to get a pass from our so-called media. Let's be clear, though, this attack on al-Shifa hospital is as much the responsibility of the Joe Biden administration as it is of Israel. As Reuters has reported, the White House said on Tuesday its independent intelligence supported Israel's claim that Hamas was using Gaza's hospitals, including its biggest, to hide command posts and hostages, while a glimmer of progress emerged in hostage negotiations. John Kirby, the White House national security spokesperson, told reporters yesterday, quote, "We have information that confirms that Hamas is using that particular hospital for a command and control node and probably to store weapons. That is a war crime," end quote. Undoubtedly, the so-called intelligence is more garbage fed to Biden by Benjamin Netanyahu, just like Netanyahu's outrageous false claims that Palestinian fighters beheaded dozens of Jewish babies on October the 7th. It's also just like the perennial Israeli so-called intelligence that Iran is always just a few months from having a nuclear bomb. It's a thin cover for crimes against humanity and genocide. A few hours ago, Barak Ravid, an Israeli journalist closely tied to the American and Israeli political and military establishments, made the following breaking news claim, and I quote, "A senior Israeli official said that the purpose of the IDF operation at the al-Shifa hospital wasn't to rescue hostages, but to locate and expose a Hamas tunnels hub that connects the hospital with other parts of the Gaza Strip," end quote. Another official reportedly said that Israel never even expected to find hostages, but that the raid was merely a symbol that there is no place that we will not reach. But what about those hostages? What about that command and control node that White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby said were there? The lies just keep coming. Earlier this week, several Palestinian human rights organizations and Palestinian American individuals filed a lawsuit in US federal court against President Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin to force them to try to stop the genocide. One of the plaintiffs is our dear friend and contributor to the Electronic Intifada, Ahmed Abunimah, whose 13-year-old son Abdullah was killed along with other members of Ahmed's family in an Israeli bombing attack on their house on the 24th of October. Ahmed, by the way, has a new article just published by the Electronic Intifada today, and I hope you will all read and share it. In a few minutes, we will be speaking to Sadaf Dost from the Center for Constitutional Rights, whose lawyers are closely involved in this lawsuit, and she'll be telling us more about it. The Center for Constitutional Rights points out that the United States has a duty under Article 1 of the Genocide Convention to prevent and punish acts of genocide, an obligation the US Congress made law in 1988 when it ratified the convention and passed the Genocide Convention Implementation Act. The duty to prevent is heightened given the United States' considerable influence on Israel. The Biden administration, the plaintiffs say, is not merely failing to prevent Israel's genocide of Palestinians, it is actively abetting it. They also note, the Center for Constitutional Rights, that courts have identified the providing of weapons and other materials to the perpetrators of genocide as a form of complicity. To be culpable, the provider need not share the recipient's genocidal intent. I do not know if this lawsuit will succeed, and of course I hope it will. I just know that we must do everything we can to stop the genocide using every tool, including continued protests and calls to representatives. They may not feel like much, but the pressure is building on our so-called leaders, and the people in Gaza are counting on us not to let up and not to stop demanding a ceasefire and an end to the genocide.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.